Oh, good morning. Another Monday morning. Monday. So good to me. I think that was the Mamas and the Papas. So that takes us back a few years, doesn't it? But top of the top of the hit list, or whatever we call that thing for music, top of the pops. Oh, a good many years ago, I would have thought, but a splendid group, and it's amazing that I can still remember their music. So anyway, here we go. We'll see whether we can. There, there. It's yes, it is a Monday morning, and after a not unstressful weekend, but nonetheless, let's hope that this week brings a fresh. Star Jackson has just popped in. I just very quickly should tell you about Star. She's lives in Yerevan. She and her sister appear on Mirador television because her sister is a first class performer, singer, wonderful voice, and in fact has got as far as one of the talent shows that global talent shows, and very creditable performance. But Star writes her lyrics for her, and she did a program on Mirador just telling us what lyricists do and how they come up with the words for songs. So good morning, Star, if you're there. That's great. It's amazing where people come from. Yerevan, by the way, just in case that name isn't familiar to you, is in Armenia. It's the capital of Armenia, and a lovely little city it is. I have to say, it's one of my favourite cities, and it also has a magnificent distillery, and it made the brandy, Ararat brandy, that Churchill drank. And the story goes, and they tell it with a straight face, at the Ararat Brandy Company in Yerevan. They tell it with a straight face that Churchill noticed that the quality of the whiskey, the brandy, had gone down, and he contacted Stalin and said, "What's going on here? This isn't up to snuff." So Stalin made an inquiry and found out that they'd sacked the chemist who was in charge of the blend and sent him to Siberia. So they immediately got the chemist back so that they could make a decent brandy for Churchill, and Churchill signalled Stalin, "All is well, thank you," and continued. Such is international politics at the top. But whether this story is true or not, they tell it with a straight face in Yerevan, and it's a lovely story. And if you ever find yourself in that part of the world, try and get a tour of that distillery, because it is so well run, it is so clean and neat, and it has some barrels of brandy in there that are almost centuries old, because it's people at the top with lots of money ordered it by the barrel, and they keep the barrel and just feed it to them as they require. And when somebody dies, if there's still brandy in the barrel, it stays there. and my gosh, I tell you, I bet a sniff would knock you over. But it's a very interesting tradition, and it also has. A rose garden in it called the Yeltsin Garden, because he donated to it when he visited the factory. And of course, I mean, I think Yeltsin carried some of that Ararat brandy around with him forever, for the way that he strutted the international stage, with leaning in one direction and then another, and holding on to aeroplanes to keep himself straight. Anyway, that's just because somebody popped in called Star Jackson, a wonderful lady, a very multi-talented lady, but lyricist for her sister, Yeva. I think it's Yeva. Yeah. Anyway, more. Yes, we've taken a little bit of time, and Star, you're worth it, my dear. And now, Spanish warships have ordered British tankers and commercial vessels out of Gibraltar waters. of course, the Royal Navy has rushed in to say, stay where you are, don't move. So the poor old commercials get stuck in between a little bit of a flourish. But it just makes you wonder, at times of tension, the Spanish Navy, I don't know if it's the Spanish government or whether it's the Spanish Navy starting to show its muscles, but what a silly thing to do. And, as if international tensions weren't at the height at the moment. And the fact of the matter is, it's silly little things like that spark world conflicts. Spanish Navy, let's demote the admiral. Now, there's another story that Amelia Earhart, who was a famous aviator of the 1930s. She took off on an attempt to fly around the world and was never seen again. That was in 1937. Well, now they've found a photograph that matches a bit of a plane that was washed up on a South Sea island, and they rather think that this was from her plane, which gives some lead. Some people said that the plane ran out of fuel and just fell into the sea. Others said that that's nonsense, the plane was well fueled, and that she probably got onto an island and nobody ever found her. And so she was a Robinson Crusoe for the rest of her life. Anyway, they hope that this bit of aircraft and the photograph to go with it when she took off, which has been lying in a safe for God knows how many years, might just solve the mystery. Why would Amelia Earhart be of interest to us? Well, a couple of years ago, at Lewis Airport, yes, we have an airport, Lewis Airport, and the air show, they have a little air show there for the villages of Eyford, Rodmell, and Southeast. Yes, Southeast. Because although we don't get great big heavy planes in, the planes that do land at Lewis Airport are noisy, and they like to keep the villagers apprised of what they're doing and keep a good relationship going, which they've got at the moment. So they hold a bean feast. They show things with well, there were a couple of 747 pilots making hamburgers, would you believe? But the guest of honour on that occasion was a gypsy moth. A gypsy moth? Yes, a gypsy moth, which was built in 1930. No, it wasn't. It was built in 1929, and it was a twin aircraft to the one that Amy Johnson flew from here. I think she took off at Croydon, if I'm not mistaken, and she flew to Australia, and they say non-stop. She obviously stopped for refueling and so on, but spent all the time in the air. There was no going to a hotel overnight, and she flew solo to Australia and set a world record. And this special guest at the little air show at Eyford, just outside Lewis, was the twin gypsy moth to Amy Johnson's plane that she flew in. And it was a beautiful, beautiful aircraft. And when it came in, there wasn't a huge crowd because it was a private party, really. But when it came in, it just glided in beautifully. And then as it came up, you could see that it's in immaculate condition, absolutely immaculate condition, and quite lovely to watch. And I don't know what the pilot's name was, but it was a lady, and out she got, having flown in specially for this occasion. So Amelia Earhart is in the news again. They may find out what happened to her, but a little attachment to pinpricks of a Knight Templar. Oh, I've got some photographs of Knights Templar waiting for me when I finish this. No, I haven't. I've got to go upstairs and I've got to do the radio show this morning. But anyway, there are little things that pop up on the screen that are quite interesting. But that's the time with Lewis, Amy Johnson, the Gypsy Moth, 1929, and it was at Eyford just a couple of years ago, and a fine aircraft it is. there's a tax on packaging that's been brought in by the government, and of course, as usual, the official position is this will help the packaging industry to get on top of this nasty habit we have of throwing plastics away and polluting the oceans and so on and so forth. Well, why is it that governments can't just be honest with us? Because now people are saying it's just a stealth tax. They're not going to use the money to improve packaging and so on and so forth. What they're going to do is just put it into general revenues. In other words, it's just another 2% or whatever it is that we're paying in tax. I just government is just. They're so crazy. Politicians are so crazy. They don't really realise what's going on in outside their own little bubble. They don't realise that we're all fed up with the whole system. What are they doing? Well, they're kicking up a fuss because they say that we should change the election rules so that people can't use social media the way that they are, or fake news. Well, I totally agree with that. But by all means, change the election rules and make it fairer if that's what it's going to do. But you've taken the eye off the ball in the fact that what dear old Boris said the other day is so true, is there's got to be root and branch change. The EU doesn't understand that. Our Parliament doesn't understand. The Americans don't understand it. The Canadians don't understand it. Politicians have got themselves so deep into their own way of life that they have no idea that there is another one outside of what they do. And they take a little peek and say, we'll change that, or we'll change that. No, there needs to be root and branch change, and that's what Boris said. And there is some evidence that, at least at a local level, that we may be seeing those changes. It'll be interesting when we hit May the 2nd, I think, in Lewis, when we've got an election, just to see whether we notice any difference in either the approach of politicians or an approach to the system, or the drastic reform which is certainly needed at Lewis District Council. And I suspect, although I know less about them, the East Sussex County Council. Change is required, and that's really what Brexit was all about, is the refusal of politicians to accept the fact that there had got to be change. And there has to be change. Doesn't matter whether we stay in, out, or in between. There's got to be change in the whole political system. So that's what we're yelling for anyway this morning. Shake up of train fares. Possibly we're going to be able to, instead of having to buy half a dozen fares to get the cheapest deal. Just to get to London early in the morning, to knock a tenner off my fare, I have to buy 2 separate tickets. It's perfectly legal, and the train companies actually advise you how to do it. But instead of that, they're going to get a straight, cheaper fare structure. Let's see. Hope it works. Don't forget that no trains between here, Lewis, and Three Bridges. You either take a bus or you go via Littlehampton. And I think there are only just two trains an hour that go via Littlehampton. And they say extended journey. I bet Littlehampton's a fair way away. And anyway, it's even though I like the place, for some reason I think that the CEO of Southern Trains lives down there, because any time there's a cancellation where it's a combination train, is the train goes on to Littlehampton, it never goes on to Eastbourne. There we are. That's the rant for the morning. Glad to be with you. Glad to get the week started again, and let's hope it's a good week for us all. Toodle pip.